The governor and Republicans have said that this biennium, as we approach this budget in the current fiscal year, I should say now the past fiscal year that we were in, is the absolute worst time to raise taxes. Doesn't speak about the future because only God knows what we will face then, but this biennium is the absolute worst time to raise taxes, and therefore to put our budget in balance, which we are constitutionally required to do, we have to make some tough choices with regard to spending. With due respect, and I'm sure Democrats could characterize their own ideology, but there has been resistance to that, and the feeling has been that we could only reduce our spending so much, and that if we are to go in balance, we need to increase revenues, and in particular increase taxes, and increase taxes on the wealthiest of our citizenry as well as businesses and others. And that has been the debate that has been played out, I think, for the past 6 months. We finished the session without even taking a vote, a regular session, on a budget. We came into special session and took a vote on 1801, which we're here today to modify for purposes of complying with the consensus bill. The governor vetoed that bill. We've had negotiation talks for 5 or 6 weeks, fits and starts, but those were the ideological divides. Yesterday, as Senator Prague indicated, the governor said, and I sort of heard it differently with due respect, but the governor said, basically, I have to govern. I'm a Republican governor with a supermajority of Democrats. I recognize that ideological divide, and I'm trying to get to a solution. Because as we sit here today, as we all know, we are one of only 3 states in the United States of America that has no budget. The governor indicated that she'll be coming out with a plan that includes some amount of tax increases. The amount I don't know, the type I don't know, but that's her statement. So in response to that, or I should say simultaneously with that, we are sitting here in this Appropriations Committee to comply with that law, and the question is, what have we done? And if you look at the base that we're working off of, as Senator DiBasella indicated, it is 1801, a budget that by OFA, nonpartisan OFA, analysis concludes that we did not cut off current services, we increased. And what is before us today is an adjustment to that base that I think warrants some analysis. Because when you come down to it, we talk about cuts and sacrifice. To most people out there who are watching this, that means something very simple. If last year I had $10, when I cut this year I'll have $9. That's a cut. If last year I had $10 and I anticipated getting $15, but I took only $12, that's not a cut. That's an increase from $10 to $12. And I think that's where we are having difficulty, or the divide, if you will, ideologically, as to how we could get spending under control to meet the revenues we anticipate in a very hurting economy. The other concern that I have with regard to the document is, unfortunately, we can't just look in 2-year increments. Yes, our budget calls for us to do that, but we as public officials, whether we intend on running again or not, would be irresponsible if we didn't look at what we do today and how it affects us in the future. The future as early as 2 years from now, at the end of this 2-year budget. And part of the concern many of us have is that we have this deficit that we need to address. We have yet to do so. And we already concede that to try to get out of this mess, we're going to use a lot of revenue that we have now, but will not have in the future. $1.4 billion worth of rainy day fund or our savings account. We're wiping it out. We're using every bit of it. That doesn't come back. $1.5 billion in stimulus money that the federal government has given us just for these 2 years, not coming back. And in addition to that, we have addressed our budget concerns by making these temporary, one-time fixes. For instance, in the document that's before us, we say that we're going to save over $31 million. $31 million we're going to reduce our expenditure. Is that true? Yes, it is. How do we do that? We have judges that have a retirement fund, and in this document we're saying we're not going to fund it. We're not going to give any money. Now, does that mean we'll never give money again? I doubt it. But for 2 years, we're not going to pay any money into this fund. Is that a cut? Will that play out over years as far as shrinking government and shrinking services? No. Probably makes a lot of judges nervous. Is it an actual savings to get us out of this mess? Temporarily. But if you add that and the many other one-time shots that are in here, they do not equate to I got $10 last year, I'm getting $9 this year. They're really a lot of gimmicks, and I don't say that disparagingly because, frankly, they've been used by everybody. But there are a lot of gimmicks and one-time shots that do not bode well for the future. So when we get out to 2012, when the budget that we hope to settle is over, when it's the next time that we come into this room to have this discussion, we're going to have to fill a hole of $1.4 billion in rainy day fund, $1.5 billion in stimulus money, and from what I understand, over billions of dollars that we borrowed. Then the discussion about raising taxes is going to be even more relevant. So by adopting this plan that we have before us, we are assuring the public that in order to come up with a balanced budget, we will necessitate over $1 billion in borrowing, which we have to pay back, and over $1 billion in increased taxation. No ifs, ands, or buts. That is the plan that is before us. That is what will happen. It is not good enough for us to say, well, we're just the Appropriations Committee. Finance deals with revenue. We all know that by adopting this budget, we are guaranteeing over $1 billion in tax increases and or a combination of another $1 billion of borrowing. Many of us on this committee, many of us in this legislature believe there is a better way, that this is not the time to raise taxes, that this is the time to make serious, difficult, but serious cuts. The kind of cuts as I defined, I made $10 last year, I'm making $9 this year. Those are real cuts. And that is the concern that many of us that sit in this committee and in the legislature have with the action that we're about to take. It ain't easy. It's not easy to cut. It is not easy to tax. But knowing what the future holds, both in the world economy and by the actions we're taking here, the worst course of action to take is the action that we have before us. And that is our largest concern. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Representative Cafero. Representative Dill.